The Lord promised His beloved child that their day would come, and now they are standing right inside. This is no random thought or feeling, no mere coincidence. This is the moment He spoke over them long ago. A moment they doubted would ever arrive. A promise they almost stopped believing in. Yet here they are. The Lord speaks to them now because the time has aligned and His promise has reached its appointed hour. They are not hearing these words by accident. They are here because what they carried, what they endured, and what they survived has led them straight to this point. He is interrupting them now because this is the exact moment they needed to be stopped before moving forward, unaware of what He is about to release. They must not rush past this, nor treat it like just another sound among many. He speaks with precision, not delay, not early, not late, but divinely aligned. Heaven does not rush, and heaven never misses. Every prior second was pure preparation. Every delay shaped them. Every closed door redirected them. Had this message reached them sooner, they would not have understood it. If it had reached them later, they would have walked past what He was preparing to give them. This moment stands balanced between who they were and who they are becoming. And that is why He speaks now. He wants them to know deeply and clearly. This message was prepared long before they made it here, before they searched, before they waited, before they felt forgotten. He wrote this moment into their journey when they were still praying. Prayers they feared went unheard. He marked this day when they were weeping in silence, still pushing through disappointment, still struggling to believe, while everything around them yelled to give up. None of this is accidental. Every step, every pause, every pain aligned to bring them here this exact second. They must receive this without hesitation. They cannot delay like they delayed before. They must not promise to return later. Tomorrow is never guaranteed, and stalling is not obedience. He is not asking them to understand everything. He only asks them to trust where they are standing right now. Certain moments carry immense weight, and this is one of them. What unfolds cannot wait for their comfort or certainty. It responds only to willingness. This truth is not for everyone. It is not for the crowds. It is for the one who stayed, the soul that is still listening, the one who wanted to walk away but chose to remain. Others will walk right past and feel nothing. Others will hear these words and stay unchanged. But they are still here because something in their spirit recognizes His voice. He is speaking to them personally, intentionally, and directly. This is not a general call. This is a private moment between you and Him. He knows how long you have waited. He knows the nights you questioned whether anything would ever change. He knows the days you felt stuck while others moved forward. He knows the disappointment that settled quietly in your heart when answers did not come, when doors did not open, when silence felt heavier than noise. He saw the prayers you stopped speaking out loud because you were tired of hoping. He heard the ones you whispered when no one else could hear. He has not forgotten a single one. Nothing was wasted. Not your tears, not your patience, not your endurance, not the seasons you thought were meaningless. Every delay carried purpose. Every closed door protected you. Every painful pause was shaping you for what you could not yet see. He did not forget you. He did not overlook you. He was arranging what needed to be in place so that when this moment came, it would not destroy you, but deliver you. Hear Him carefully now. This moment is time sensitive. Hesitation has consequences, not because He is harsh, but because opportunity moves. What is unfolding requires attention, and through presence and response. If you turn away again, if you scroll past this, if you silence this moment like you have silenced others, you may miss what is opening right now. Some things do not announce themselves loudly. Some doors open quietly and close without warning. He does not say this to frighten you. He says this to awaken you. Look back and see how everything aligned. The delays that felt cruel, the pain that felt unnecessary, the endings that broke you, the detours that confused you, none of it was random. He was weaving something larger than you could understand at the time. He was protecting you from paths that would have drained you. He was removing people who could not go where you are going. He was strengthening you in ways comfort never could. Every piece was placed so that when this moment arrived, you would be able to stand inside it. Come to Jesus. We are nothing without Him if He is our only foundation. If you are hearing this now, it is because you survived what should have ended you. There were moments you were not supposed to make it through. Times you were close to giving up. Seasons that pressed you harder than you thought you could endure. Yet, you are still here. That is not luck. That is grace. That is purpose. That is His hand holding you when you did not even know how to pray anymore. They stay with Him. They do not leave. They do not rush. They don't let distraction steal what He is giving them now. They remain present. They listen with their hearts, not just their ears. He draws them closer because what comes next requires clarity, not confusion. They are about to receive confirmation for things they have questioned for a long time. They are about to feel peace where there has been tension. They are about to understand why the waiting was necessary. He is not finished speaking to them. This is only the beginning of what He wants to reveal. But they must stay. They must receive. They must allow this moment to do what it was sent to do. They do not scroll away. They do not delay. They don't tell themselves this isn't for them. They are here because this is their appointed moment and He is speaking to them now. There were moments when they stopped believing this day would ever come. He watched it happen slowly. Not all at once, but little by little. Hope did not disappear suddenly. It quietly faded as time passed and nothing seemed to change. They kept going. They kept functioning. They kept smiling when needed. But deep inside they wondered if the things they once cried to Him for had been forgotten. They told themselves they were being realistic. Soft music, that they were just learning to accept life as it was. But the Lord knew the truth. It was not acceptance. It was weariness. It was the tiredness that comes from waiting too long without answers, from praying and hearing only silence, from believing and seeing no visible movement. The Lord remembered when their faith was louder, when they spoke to Him with expectation instead of caution. They once believed that change was close. They once felt certain that something good was about to happen. But as days turned into months and months into years, that certainty weakened. They watched others receive what they were still asking for. They saw doors open for others while theirs remained closed. They began to tell themselves that maybe this was just how life would be for them. Maybe this was all there was. The Lord heard those thoughts even when they did not speak them aloud. There were moments when they told themselves, nothing is ever going to change. Moments when they adjusted their dreams so they would hurt less. Moments when they stopped asking Him boldly and started praying carefully, as if they did not want to be disappointed again. The Lord saw them lower their expectations, not because they lacked faith, but because their heart had grown tired of hoping. They did not stop believing in him, but they stopped believing for themselves. And he wants them to know this. He never judged them for that. He never turned away from them in those moments. He stayed close, even when they felt far from hope. The day felt delayed because they could not see what he was doing beyond what their eyes could measure. They measured time by clocks and calendars. He measured it by growth, readiness, and protection. They thought nothing was happening because nothing was changing on the surface. But beneath what they could see, he was working carefully, patiently, and intentionally. He was holding back things that would have crushed them if they arrived way too soon. He was removing paths that looked good but would have led them away from who they were meant to become. He was preparing them in ways comfort never could. They thought the delay meant denial. It did not. They thought the silence meant absence. It did not. They thought the waiting meant he had moved on to others. He had not. He was shaping them quietly, strengthening them slowly, teaching them endurance without letting them break. Some lessons cannot be rushed. Some blessings cannot be received by an unprepared heart. He delayed not to punish them, but to protect them. He delayed not to withhold love, but to deepen it. There were times they questioned him, times they wondered if they had missed their moment. Times they feared that the window had closed. He heard every single question. He felt every ache. He saw how disappointment settled into their spirit like a heavy weight they learned to carry. They kept moving forward, but joy felt distant. Hope felt risky. Believing felt exhausting. Still, they did not walk away completely. Even in their doubt, they stayed connected. Even in their fatigue, they did not stop reaching for him, even if it was with trembling hands. Please support this channel. This work aims to bring joy and devotion to God into daily lives. Those who wish can kindly show their support by donating through Super Thanks. This is the day they once cried for. This is the moment they asked him for when they were alone and unsure anyone was listening. This is the answer that began forming long before they were ready to receive it. He did not forget the prayers they whispered through tears. He did not overlook the nights they went to sleep disappointed. He did not ignore the moments they felt overlooked, delayed, or left behind. He remembered all of it. He carried all of it, and now he tells them clearly so their hearts can hear it again. This day is real, and it is here. They could not see it coming because they had learned not to expect it anymore. They closed off their hearts because hope had hurt them before. But he did not forget how to surprise them. He did not forget to fulfill what he promised. He allowed the waiting to stretch them, not to break them. He allowed the silence to deepen them, not to abandon them. He allowed time to pass so when they arrived, they would recognize it, not by noise but by peace. What felt like delay was alignment, a gentle melody. What felt like loss was pruning. What felt like stillness was preparation. They were becoming someone stronger than they realized, someone capable of carrying what they once desired without being consumed by it. If this day had come earlier, it would have overwhelmed them. If it had come later, they would have stopped believing altogether. That is why it is now. That is why he is speaking to them now. Let their hearts remember the version of themselves that once begged him for this moment. Let that memory rise not to bring pain, but to bring understanding. They are no longer who they were back then. They have grown, they have endured, they have learned to trust him, even when answers were slow. And because of that, they are standing inside the very day they thought would never arrive. The believer shouldn't rush past this realization, letting it settle deeply, letting it heal the heavy disappointment they carried. restoring the hope they once buried to survive. This is no mere coincidence. This is divine fulfillment. It is the day they cried for, and the Lord brought them here, not to tease them, but to remind them that His timing never fails even when the wait feels wrong. He is with them now, and what comes next will make the long waiting make sense. While they wondered why life felt so quiet, so slow and hidden, He was working deeply within them where no one else could ever see. They thought nothing was happening, since there was no applause, no visible movement, nor any clear sign that progress was being made. But His work in them was never meant to be public at first. Some preparation must happen in secret, so that when the time comes it cannot be taken from them. He was shaping them in places words cannot reach, strengthening parts of them that will one day need to carry weight without breaking. The pain they walked through was not meaningless. Every ache, every disappointment, every unanswered question served a purpose greater than they understood at the time. Pain taught them discernment and taught them compassion. It taught them how to listen instead of rushing, how to feel without becoming bitter, how to endure without losing their heart. He did not cause their pain, but He used it. God turned what could have destroyed them into something that refined them. They learned how to survive storms without losing their faith even when their emotions were exhausted. There were seasons when they felt isolated, when it seemed like no one truly understood them or could walk beside them in what they were facing. They questioned why others faded away, why support disappeared, why conversations grew shallow when they needed depth. That isolation was not abandonment, it was protection. There were parts of their journey that required silence so they could hear God clearly. There were lessons that could not be learned while too many voices surrounded them. God removed distractions so they could grow. Roots, not just branches. Waiting became their classroom. In waiting, they learned patience. When they wanted speed, they learned trust. When they wanted control, they learned how to sit with uncertainty without running from God. Waiting stripped away their dependence on outcomes and built their dependence on His presence. It taught them how to remain steady even when answers did not come quickly. That kind of strength cannot be learned in comfort. It is learned in stillness and surrender. Rejection was not a sign that they were unwanted. It was a sign that certain doors were not meant to shape them. Every time they were overlooked, each time they were misunderstood, every time they were pushed aside, the Lord was redirecting them from places that could not hold who they were becoming. Some spaces could not contain their growth. Some relationships could not survive their transformation. He allowed separation so they would not shrink themselves to be accepted where they no longer belong. They wondered why others could not walk with them through those seasons. It hurt to feel alone. It hurt to feel unseen. But not everyone is assigned to every chapter of their life. Some people are meant to start with them, but not finish with them. Others are meant to encourage them briefly and then step aside. This was not rejection of them. It was alignment for them. He was protecting both of them from carrying burdens that were not meant for them to carry. He was teaching them how to stand without leaning too heavily on human approval. He was showing them how to hear His voice clearly without constant confirmation from others. He was building a quiet confidence in them, one that does not need validation to remain steady. They learned how to be faithful even when no one was watching, how to remain kind when they were misunderstood, how to stay humble while growing stronger. Everything was intentional. Nothing was wasted. The nights they cried alone strengthened their compassion. The days they felt overlooked sharpened their awareness. The seasons they felt hidden built their character. The Lord was preparing them for moments when they would need clarity, not confusion, courage, not fear, faith, not impulse. What God is bringing them into requires depth. और depth हो पताश हो गता है. They may not have realized it then, but they were becoming someone who could carry peace in chaos, wisdom under pressure, and love in difficulty. They were learning restraint, discernment, and patience. These qualities do not arrive suddenly. They are formed through repeated choices to trust Him when understanding is limited. They chose to stay soft when hardness would have been easier. They chose to keep believing when disappointment tempted them to withdraw. God knew there were times they felt forgotten times. They wondered if their obedience mattered. Times they questioned whether their faithfulness was seen. But the Lord saw it all clearly. He saw everything. He measured every sacrifice. He recorded every tear. Preparation is not always loud. Often, it is quiet and unseen. But it is powerful. What is built in secret cannot be easily shaken in public. Amen, Lord. Pray, breathe new life into me. If longing for His renewal, the isolation refined their focus, the waiting strengthened their endurance, the rejection clarified their path, all of it worked to prepare them for what they are stepping into now. They are stronger than they were, wiser than they were, more grounded than they were, and most importantly, more connected to Him than they were before. That connection is what will sustain them in what comes next. The Lord did not delay their growth. He protected it. He did not remove them from view without reason. He was anchoring them. They were learning how to remain faithful without reward, how to serve without recognition, how to trust without evidence. These lessons form a foundation that will not collapse when pressure comes. And now they can see more clearly why the path was narrow, why the seasons were quiet, why the progress felt slow. He was preparing them for something that requires stability, humility, and trust. He was shaping them not just for what they want, but for what they can now handle. They are not behind music swells. They were being prepared. They were not overlooked. They were being refined. And now, as they step forward, they will recognize that what once felt like delay was actually Him working patiently, carefully, and intentionally in their life. While they searched around wondering why their life felt hidden, quiet, and unseen, the Lord was preparing them in ways that could never be rushed or explained at the time. They measured progress by visible changes, by movement they could point to, by signs others would notice. But God worked beneath the surface, where roots grow, where strength forms, where character is shaped away from applause. What He was building in them required privacy. If exposed too early to the world, it would have been crushed by pressure and heavy expectations they were not meant to carry. The pain they endured was not random. The Lord knew how deeply it cut. He knew how it made them question their own worth and sometimes even His nearness. Pain became part of their training because it taught them to lean into Him instead of relying on their own understanding. It stripped away illusions, forcing them to see what truly mattered. Through pain, they learned empathy. They learned patience. They learned how to stay gentle even when life was not gentle with them. That kind of strength is never taught through ease. Isolation was another season of preparation. There were seasons they felt utterly alone, even with people all around them. Conversations felt empty. Connections felt distant. They wondered why they could not fully explain what they were going through or why others seemed unable to walk with them in the depths. The Lord allowed that isolation so their focus would never be divided. A quiet pause. He needed them to hear his voice clearly, without all the competing noise. He needed them to learn to sit with him. How to listen, how to trust his presence even when it felt silent. That waiting was never wasted time. It was training their spirit. In the waiting, they learned restraint. They learned to pause instead of rushing ahead of him. They learned to trust without seeing immediate results. The waiting taught them surrender, control, how to breathe through uncertainty, and how to stay faithful when answers were slow. They thought waiting meant stagnation, but it was strengthening them in ways movement never could. A quiet moment. It was teaching them to remain steady instead of reactive. Rejection was one of their hardest lessons. And the Lord knew how deeply it hurt. Being overlooked, misunderstood, or pushed aside made them question their worth. But that rejection was never about their value. It was about direction. Every time they were not chosen, every time a door closed unexpectedly, the Lord was guiding them from spaces that could not sustain who they were becoming. Certain environments cannot support their growth. Some relationships would have required them to shrink themselves to remain accepted. He removes them not to hurt them but to protect them. They wonder why others cannot walk with them through these seasons. The truth is, not everyone is assigned to every part of their journey. Some people are meant to encourage them briefly. Others are meant to challenge them, and some are meant to step away when the path becomes narrow. God does not remove them because they are bad, but because their purpose has ended. There are things the Lord must teach them that can only be learned without leaning on others for reassurance. He is teaching them independence without isolation, strength without hardness, confidence without pride. He is showing them how to stand without constant validation. He is helping them learn to trust His voice even when it is not echoed by those around them. They are learning discernment. They are learning when to speak and when to remain silent. They are learning how to move with wisdom instead of impulse. Everything is intentional. The quiet seasons are intentional. The slow progress is intentional. The moments they feel unseen are intentional. The Lord is preparing them for what requires depth, humility, and stability. Where God is leading them cannot be carried by anyone who still needs seeking approval to feel secure or comfort to feel confident. The Lord was shaping them into someone who could shoulder responsibility without losing their peace, walking through pressure without ever growing bitter. They may not have realized it at the time, but they were growing stronger on the inside. They were learning to steady their emotions, choosing to respond instead of reacting, and staying grounded when their circumstances shifted. These spiritual lessons are not glamorous, but they remain essential. They lay the foundation for what comes next. Without them, their deepest desires would have overwhelmed them instead of blessing them. God saw the nights they questioned whether their hidden life even mattered. He saw them wonder if their faithfulness was invisible. He watched them wrestle with doubt and disappointment while still choosing to keep going. Every quiet act of obedience mattered. Every time they chose kindness when they were hurting mattered. Every time they chose patience instead of bitterness, it mattered. Nothing was lost. Nothing was ignored. The Lord was building endurance in them. Endurance allows them to keep going when all excitement fades. Endurance keeps them steady when emotions fluctuate. Endurance carries them through seasons where simple motivation is not enough. That endurance will serve them well where the Lord is leading them. They will need it to remain consistent, to stay faithful, and to continue trusting Him when new challenges arise. The preparation they went through was not meant to break them. It was meant to anchor them. It was meant to deepen their relationship with Him, so that their confidence would rest in His presence instead of circumstances. They learned how to pray honestly, how to sit in silence, how to trust His character even when answers were delayed. Now they can look back and see that isolation refined their focus, the waiting strengthened their faith, the rejection clarified their path, and the pain softened their heart instead of hardening it. These were not accidents, they were steps. They were layers of preparation, shaping them into someone who can receive what He is about to place in their hands. They were not behind, they were being trained. They were not forgotten, they were being prepared. And now, as they move forward, they will recognize that the hidden seasons were not empty. They were full of purpose, full of growth, and full of His presence working quietly, faithfully, and intentionally within them. This message arrived right now because time, as they understand it, is not the same as time as He governs it. They count days and weeks. He measures readiness, alignment, and protection. They often think something is late when it was actually being guarded. They believed something should have come sooner because their desire was strong, their need was real, and their pain was heavy. But desire alone does not determine timing. Need alone does not open doors. He releases things when they can bless them instead of burdening them, when they can build them instead of breaking them, when they can stay instead of slipping through their hands. This message could not have come earlier, no matter how much they wanted it to. There were parts of them that were still healing, even if they did not realize it. There were expectations that would have distorted what He wanted to say. There were fears that would have twisted His words into pressure instead of peace. If He had not spoken clearly before, they would have tried to rush the outcome. Instead of receiving His instruction, they would have leaned on excitement instead of wisdom. They would have moved from emotion rather than understanding. Earlier, they were listening but they were not yet hearing. They were present but not settled. They were searching for answers more than they were ready for truth. There is a difference. Answers satisfy curiosity. Truth transforms the heart. He does not speak just to inform them. He speaks to change them, to align them, to steady them. Before now, their hearts were too restless. They wanted relief more than direction. They wanted escape more than growth. The Lord waited because love waits when rushing would harm. If this message had reached them too soon, it would have confused them. They would have misunderstood its weight. They would have felt overwhelmed instead of strengthened. They might have doubted themselves instead of trusting Him. They were still measuring themselves by what others were doing, still comparing their pace, still questioning their worth. When things did not move quickly, that mindset would have turned this message into pressure instead of promise. He was also protecting what He placed inside them. Words spoken at the wrong time can be stolen, misused, or misapplied. He waited until their roots grew deeper, until their faith was quiet but strong, until they no longer needed constant signs to believe He was with them. He waited until they learned to sit with uncertainty without running away. He waited until disappointment no longer controlled their decisions. That is when they became ready. This message also arrived now because circumstances aligned, not just around them, but within them. Their perspective changed. Their reaction softened. Their prayers matured. They began asking different questions. Instead of only asking when, they began asking why. Instead of only asking for change, they began asking for understanding. That shift mattered deeply. It signaled real growth. It showed him they were no longer chasing blind outcomes but were becoming ready to steward what he would give. If he had spoken earlier, they would have tried to force things that needed to unfold naturally. They would have knocked on doors he had already closed for their protection. They would have held on to relationships that were meant to end. They would have resisted change because fear was still louder than trust. He waited until trust became stronger than fear. He waited until obedience no longer felt like loss. He waited until they could hear him without filtering his voice through anxiety. And now they are ready to receive without rushing. They are ready to listen without interrupting. They are ready to move without panic. That is why this moment matters. They are no longer asking him to prove himself. They are learning to trust his character. They are no longer demanding quick answers. They are willing to walk with him step by step. That readiness cannot be rushed. It must be grown. This message also arrived now because what comes next requires clarity. Confusion would have harmed them in the next season. Unresolved fear would have weakened them. Instability would have hindered them, distracted them. He waited until their spirit could carry instruction without becoming overwhelmed. He waited until their heart could hold truth without resisting it. He waited until they could receive confirmation without questioning whether they deserved it. They may feel this message is late because the wait was long, but from his eternal view, it is precise. It arrived at the moment hearing it would strengthen them instead of shaking them. Music plays softly. It arrived when their heart could stay open instead of defensive. It arrived when their mind could receive without arguing. That is not delay. That is divine care. They are ready now in ways they were not before. Ready does not mean perfect. It means willing. It means grounded. It means being humble enough to listen and strong enough to obey. They are no longer chasing signs. They are learning to recognize his voice. They are no longer desperate for change. They are open to transformation. Music swells. That shift changes everything. This message is not arriving to excite them temporarily. It is arriving to align them permanently. Music fades. It is not here to rush them forward blindly. It is here to steady them as they move. He speaks now because they can hold what he is about to say without dropping it. They can carry it without fear. They can apply it without forcing it. They are not the same person they were when they first prayed for this. They are wiser. They are steadier. They are more aware. They have learned patience, discernment, and true restraint. Those virtues prepare them for what is ahead. Without them, what they desire would have overwhelmed them. With them, it will strengthen them. That is why the Lord waited. That is why this message did not come earlier. And that is why it is here now. They are ready to hear. They are ready to receive. They are ready to move forward with clarity instead of confusion, with peace instead of panic, with trust instead of fear. This moment is no accident. It is intentional. And the Lord speaks now because they are prepared to listen in the way this moment requires. They say, Father, you're my unshakable hope. If they're standing on his promises, sharing this video